From Journey with VRD, you're listening to the Visions, Missions, and Manifestations podcast, the number one place for spirituality, healing, and transcendence. I'm your host, Vivian Raquel Dayan. Now let's get into it. So, welcome to today's episode where we delve into the transformative journey of Gwen Payne, the visionary behind Inspired Sedona. With over 2 decades of experience, Gwen has dedicated her life to guiding individuals towards authenticity, vitality, and purpose. Her personal path from overcoming depression and addiction to embracing motherhood led her to discover the profound impact of breathwork. This pivotal experience ignited her passion for various healing modalities, including family consultations, the passion test, and somatic sex and relationship coaching. At Inspired Sedona, Gwen offers a sanctuary for those seeking to reconnect with their true selves, providing personalized breathwork sessions, coaching, and facilitator training. Her compassionate approach has empowered countless individuals to navigate life's challenges and rediscover joy. Join us as we explore Gwen's inspiring story and the transformative power of her work. Gwen, welcome to the Visions, Missions, and Manifestations podcast. We're so happy to have you here. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm feeling very excited to be here. I had such a fun time with you on your retreat and with all the lovely ladies that were present. So I'm thrilled to be diving deep with you today.
Yes, and you don't even know how much each woman absolutely loved your session, your workshop. Every single person was like, "Can you get the playlist from Gwen? We need that playlist." So everybody said you were one of the top two facilitators on the retreat who did a workshop. And so I knew we had to get you on here. And when Laura reached out asking, like, "Hey, how did it go with Gwen?" I was like, "We loved her. We need to have her again."
Yay. Well, it's truly my honor. And it's one of the things that I enjoy the most is actually facilitating a group like yours on a private retreat, because I get to come into a group that you've already been cultivating and doing your magic with, for example. And so I just get to land and, enjoy that rich community that's already been created and just maybe take it a step more expansive, I don't know, more
Mm-hmm.
connected, more free, just and making playlists, by the way, that's one of my favorite pastimes, is to make playlists. So whether it's for breath work or ecstatic dance, I do have a Spotify just under my name, Gwen Payne, with lots and lots of playlists that anybody can access, whether it's for breath work or ecstatic dance. So please enjoy. Yeah. My profile picture is a mandala. And
Okay, perfect.
yeah, yeah.
So, for those who haven't experienced your work in person and who are tuning in now, what would you
hmm
say your title is? What do you call yourself?
Well, to be honest, I call myself a transformation guide. That's what
Mm.
I call myself. I searched high and low for, what kind of a title, and I mean, there are times when I say life and intimacy coach, but that's just so bland. And and there are so many of us who do that. And my coaching encompasses a lot of different modalities, as you mentioned. Um, and so transformation guide feels a little juicier to me.
There's many layers there that you could go into.
Yes.
And I know you've been doing this for years, but I
Yes.
want to ask, how'd your story begin? How do you get into this world of spirituality and healing?
Yeah, well, uh, really, I'm going to honor my mom here, who's passed now. But when I was 21, and let me just set the stage a little bit, I was raised in an atheist and agnostic household, meaning my father was atheist, my mother was agnostic. But she had this kind of secret spiritual life that she kept from my father, right? So, interestingly enough, her aunt, my great aunt, was a very well known spiritual teacher. So it's in the genes, right? And I definitely do ancestral work through the family constellations. So it's not surprising that I have a spiritual teacher in my heritage, but we're both kind of black sheeps or, in our families. So, like I said, I was raised without religion. Um, and my mom started to kind of acknowledge her curiosity, let's just say, by investigating through books and workshops and things like that, her own connection to spirituality. And so she invited me to go when I was 21 and had no connection to my spirituality, to what she called a yoga retreat, which actually ended up being a Sufi retreat. And there was literally no yoga. Okay. I went because I thought it was yoga. And she had turned me on to yoga by the time I was 15. I was already doing yoga and I loved it. But it was very, it wasn't so spiritually oriented. It was more kind of hatha, it was the exercises and
Mm.
the physical component, the way that I learned it. And so, at any rate, I went to this yoga retreat, like I said, that had no yoga. And I was immersed in the world of Sufism, and I was like being a fish in water, like being put in water for the first time. I mean, I loved it. I was by far the youngest person there, and it was at this wonderful place called Feathered Pipe Ranch in Bozeman, Montana. And I was, going through a relationship breakup at the time. And, 21, I was kind of finding my way, a little uncomfortable in my own skin. And I just came alive at that retreat. We
Mm.
studied the Enneagram, we did all kinds of practices. And at that retreat, there was a woman that was doing private breathwork sessions as an add-on if you wanted to. And it was her studio was right across from the deck where we would have our meals. And periodically we'd be sitting there enjoying a meal and we'd see somebody come out of her studio like transformed, like
Wow.
visibly transformed. Their faces would be open and radiant. And there was just like almost like a luminosity coming from them. And these were people that we were in the retreat with. And so we knew the before and we were seeing the after. And so we both were compelled to ask, what is going on in that room? And the answer, of course, was, oh, it's it's breath work.
Hmm.
And as I've heard so many times over the course of my career, both my mother and I look at each other and say, breath work, but we breathe all the time. How on earth is that possible through breathing? And so we each had our own private session. And I can tell you, I remember that breathwork journey to this day vividly. And it's not uncommon with clients that their first journey is that memorable. Not
Mm.
everybody, but there's something about accessing that altered state of consciousness, if you haven't experienced it before, that is truly, truly memorable. So even though I've done thousands of journeys personally since then, I can still tell you literally the sounds, the visions, all of it. And yet, I didn't know that this was going to be my path in life. I really did
Mhm.
not know that. But that was my introduction and kind of got me on the path of seeking more experiences like that.
Mm. So, just for the listener who doesn't know what Sufi is, because this is the
Hmm.
first time I'm hearing it, can you explain a
Okay.
little bit of what that is?
Yes, it's the mystical branch of Islam.
Very
Right.
cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Sufi dancers are like the whirling dervishes where they dance and twirl in circles. And that's not unfamiliar to me because I grew up in Tunisia, which is North Africa. And so I was exposed growing up to trance dancing. I think that's in part why
Mm.
ecstatic dancing comes so naturally to me, where as a way to enter an altered state of consciousness, women will just literally rock their heads back and forth and dance, kind of swaying back and forth to same premise as breath work, enter an altered state of consciousness.
Wow. And just to break down your history a little bit more,
Yeah.
at what age did you move from Tunisia
Hmm.
to America?
Yeah. So I was born in Rome, Italy.
Oh,
And
okay.
then at 18 months, two American parents. And then at 18 months old, we moved to Tunisia. And so I grew up in Carthage, Tunisia, and was there until I was 18. And then I came to the US for college. And that was really my first introduction to the US. I mean, I'd come twice before for 2 weeks. But
Mm-hmm.
so, here I was technically an American coming to college, of course, speaking English, but let me tell you, it was a major culture shock. I mean, and nobody expected me to have a foreign mind because
Mm-hmm.
I looked the part of an American, but inside I'm like, I don't know what you people are talking about half the time because there are a lot of references to media in the US. People talk a lot
Mm-hmm.
about TV shows and things like that, and it all just went right over my head. But, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I've been here obviously a long time since then. And at one point, I did go back and live in Tunisia again in my 30s, but I've been primarily in the US since then.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how do you feel your upbringing has played a part in your work?
Well, as I mentioned, I had American parents
Mhm.
growing up in Tunisia. I mean, I'll tell you, I feel that my heart's home is Tunisia, even though I don't live there, but that's it in my heart, that's my home. And yet I feel very at home here too. So it's like when I say my heart's home, it's where I come from. And it truly did for me in so many ways. In part because there's a rootlessness that I grew up with. I didn't have a religion. I had an American passport, but I'd never been to the US. I didn't really know much about the US. I wasn't Tunisian, right? And so I've never been a black and white person because I've seen so many different ways of living and beliefs and values and cultures and just perspectives. Because not only as I described, American and in Tunisia, I attended multicultural schools, so where people were from all over the world, essentially. And so it wasn't just those two nationalities that I was exposed to. I was exposed to, a plethora of nationalities. So there's just, I've never thought that this is the way that this goes. It's like, well, actually, there could be lots of ways that this goes. But then you
Mhm.
add to that, I'm a Pisces. So, we've got the two fish.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness. I feel like Leos and Pisces get along so well.
We
Oh yeah.
do, for sure.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so coming from a place where you didn't really have a religion and also you almost didn't identify with whatever culture you were placed in because you
Yeah.
weren't necessarily from there, how did spirituality give you that home sense of
That's,
belonging?
yeah, that's such a great question. Well, it has given me that sense of belonging to myself and to
Mhm.
life and to what I call the human family. Because, in a somatic way in breath work, I get to experience that coming home to myself.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
In the deepest way possible. Even through ecstatic dance, I experience that where it's like I just lose myself and at the same time find myself. Right. Basically, it's losing the mind and all the ideas and coming home to the body, the movement. And then I also, through those practices, like feel awakened to life itself. So there's the sense of belonging to life and at the same time, all that is. So, there have
Mm.
been many, many times in breathwork where I just feel that just that inherent connection to all that is. And then through family constellations, I've experienced a coming home to this sense of belonging to my family system. So not just to my
Mm.
parents, but to my ancestors as well. And in fact, that's been such a deep healing for me. There's no mistake. There's no mistake that I quote unquote stumbled into family constellations, right? Everything that I do, I didn't seek. It kind of came to me. So I truly feel like I'm living my calling. And in family constellations, um, it, it it really truly has anchored me and healed that part of me that felt so alone, kind of
Mm.
existentially alone. especially when there are challenging times. Because I say a prayer to my ancestors every morning. I make a point to stay connected to them, as some cultures do. Some cultures, the concept of our ancestors is woven into day to day life, whether that's through offerings or prayers or blessings or asking for help. And I've incorporated that into my morning practice.
I absolutely love that. And so is would you say prayer is one of your morning routines or a morning ritual you do on the daily?
Absolutely. And again, this was completely foreign to me,
Hmm.
growing in the way that I grew up. I remember at, some point, I want to say probably close to 20 years ago, I started to kind of yearn for the ability to pray, right? It seemed like such a nice thing to do, like so comforting and connecting, but I had no relationship to it. I had no comfort around it. I didn't know how to do it. And I remember buying a book, like kind of like Prayer for Dummies kind of a thing. And
Oh.
um, I just didn't really connect with it. But then I went through one of my rock bottoms. I've had a few. I went through one of them, which was related to a breakup, a pretty nasty breakup that was, again, just kind of after that, kind of seeking prayer. Um, and I was literally kind of brought to my knees, both emotionally and financially, as a result of this breakup. And I had a lot of time on my hands to go within.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that time that I discovered Tasha Silver and her non denominational books of prayer. Her first book I read was Outrageous Openness. And then the book that was really seminal for me is the Change Me Prayers.
Mm-hmm.
And so during this time after the breakup, when there was so much raw emotions that up for me and kind of a sense of being lost and how am I going to find my way again? And I would literally read prayers out of her book over and over and over and over. And the main premise of these prayers is to surrender to a higher power, greater intelligence. And when I
Mm-hmm.
would read some of the prayers, because she has them for different purposes, one is maybe around surrendering a relationship over to, this greater intelligence. But when I would read these prayers during that particular time, it would bring up the emotion. And I would literally sometimes sob or feel anger. And I would stay with reading that prayer until the emotion had cleared out of me. I would sometimes read the same prayer for 20 minutes or even more, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
such a powerful process. And ever since then, um, I've kind of created my own prayer, but based on her prayers. And I do that every morning. I do breath work most mornings. I also do the passion test, right? I read my passion test, which is a process that I learned about 15 years ago, and I do brain games. So I've got a big morning practice. I have to get
Mm-hmm.
up pretty early, but it is honestly the best part of my day. It truly, truly is. Yeah.
I love
And the
that you said that. Yes.
and the animals all gather around. We've got, cats and dogs, and when I'm in sitting in my chaise running through all of these things, I mean, I think the energy just calls to them because they all just want to be right on my lap.
I love that. I love that. I agree with you. My morning routine is the best part of my day. It sets the day, but it also like resets me. So I
Mhm.
resonate with that deeply. I have to
Mhm.
ask, are you an only child?
No.
Oh,
Although technically, if you go by birth order, I'm 7 years younger than my brother. So I have two brothers. One's 8 years older, one's 7 years older.
okay.
And so, they talk about in birth order after 7 years, you're like an only child. And I was raised after 6 years old, I was raised primarily alone because they went to boarding school. So,
Ah,
but definitely kind of, let's say, I was like not as integrated in the family because I was the only girl and I came way after. And so I have a whole history of wounding around that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your perspective on religion now. So now coming through all the experiences you moved through,
Hmm.
how do you identify with religion?
Well, I don't identify with religion. I identify with spirituality. Yeah.
I love
So
that.
I dogma of any kind is not my path. It's not for me. I
Okay.
mean, I really honor everybody's path, but I tell you, like when I was in my 20s, I was engaged to a Catholic, and I really thought about like, oh, well, maybe I can convert to Catholicism. I was still in the kind of that place of um, wanting to belong to something,
Hmm.
and this was pre really embarking on my spiritual path. And so I really kind of gave it a shot in that I went and investigated and talked to the priest and it was like pretty quickly I was like, okay, no. No, I can't. I literally cannot follow one teacher and just get spoon-fed, you know, the way to think, the way to do, the way to behave. So my spiritual connection is really my own. I've had lots of different teachers, and what resonates with me is what I believe in, meaning that it's for me about if they say something that awakens what a knowing is inside of me. Do you
Mm.
know what I mean? But I
I
can't
do
just
know
say,
what you mean.
oh, this is what to believe in. And I go, okay, yeah, I can believe in that.
Right.
No,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yep,
no.
I totally get that. And so moving into your story, your journey through life, so you
Yeah.
have this experience on this quote unquote yoga retreat and it's life changing for you. This breathwork
Mm.
experience changes everything. And then at what point did you say, wait a second, I want to devote my life to something similar?
Not for a while. Not for a
Wow.
while. It probably was about 15 years later, right? So
Wow.
here I went to this, retreat, on invitation, not something I was seeking. And then, like I said, once I'd had that breathwork experience, it was an experience that I wanted to have more of. Like,
Mhm.
wow, it was such a wow experience. But I'm not going to lie, I sought that out in a lot of ways that included substances, right? And at the time, it wasn't medicine journeys. Let me tell you, it was partying. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, I got involved in the rave culture in LA right when it was starting off. It was actually kind of a really beautiful movement. It wasn't about teenagers and it wasn't about consumerism. It really was more about freedom of expression. So I'd just come over from England, and it was primarily 30-year olds, even 20 late 20s, 30s, 40-year olds, and it was illegal, and it was very, very creative. That being said, there was a lot of ecstasy. There were a lot of substances being done, and I definitely partook, but there was also real beauty and creativity to that movement. Um, so yeah, I mean, I at the same time always had this thread of like, yes, yoga and healthy living, and then there was this other side of me that was like, let's take things to the edge, let's live life to the fullest, whatever that looks like. But then, um, then I got pregnant, and
Mhm.
that just really changed my whole lifestyle, right? And so, yes, well, one would hope, right? But
Mhm.
uh, not everybody, that doesn't happen for everybody, but it definitely did for me. It got me really thinking as to what do I want to do with my life, right? And I knew it wasn't just parenting. I mean, that was obviously a huge component, but it brought me kind of closer to my own longing or desire of what to do with my life. And I definitely would call myself a late bloomer. I had done all kinds of jobs up until then and gained experience from each one and enjoyed some and didn't enjoy others. But it got me really thinking in a like real like life pathway, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I decided I wanted to go into psychology, but then I realized like I didn't want to be in grad school with a baby. And
Right.
so I kind of put that on hold for a minute. And then, as life would have it, it put me on the path of a breathwork facilitator training school. My
Oh.
first my first exposure to breathwork since all those years prior. I was at a bookstore. There was a lecture. It was free. I thought, what the hell? I went in. Very engaging speaker, charismatic, inspired talk. And it was a funnel to a breathwork facilitator training.
Mm.
And by the time that talk was over, I found myself signing up. So I think part of what has put me on my path is to know when to say yes.
I love that. I love that.
Even though that was completely out of the blue, right? And I didn't have any idea, frankly, how I was going to pay for that school or how I was going to juggle my son. But it wasn't as, intensive as going to grad school, but it was still intensive. It was a year and a half program.
Wow.
Yeah, it was counseling and hypnotherapy. And there I was signing up. There's a part of me looking, going, what are you doing? You just met this man an hour ago. You just listened to one
Right.
hour of this man's talk and you're signing up for his trip. And I've never looked back. Literally, I've never
So,
looked back.
so Gwen, I have to ask,
Yeah,
how do you know when to say yes?
you've got great questions, Vivian, I gotta say. So, I think it's just so full-bodied. So a lot of what I bring to my work is embodiment.
Mm,
And that is something that, in a way, I've always had, but certainly developed more of, is this strong connection to my body. Therefore, it's like a body knowing. It's an energy in the body that's just almost overcomes me, right? So I would say that's how I know. That's how I know when I have my yes.
beautiful. Imagine stepping into a world where everything you desire in love, confidence, and connection is not just possible, it's inevitable. Welcome to the Journey with VRD Manifestation Retreat in the heart of upstate New York. April 24th to April 27th, a sacred space designed for women who are ready to break free from old patterns and step into her higher self. Picture this: you wake up to crisp mountain air surrounded by the beauty of nature, a private chef nourishing your body with gourmet meals, and a circle of like-minded women lifting you higher. This isn't just a retreat, it's a quantum shift into your next level of love and confidence. This retreat is for you if you're looking to heal your relationships, deepen intimacy, or strengthen your connection with yourself. You're tired of red flags, tired of breadcrumbs, and ready to call in love that is fulfilling and aligned. You're a powerhouse woman whose success may intimidate men, and you're done settling for less. Perhaps you're feeling stuck in love and unsure how to shift it. Inside this luxurious high level experience, you'll unlock manifestations acceleration workshops, healing and confident practices, relationship mastery tools, and of course, quantum energy healing. And here's the magic: this retreat aligns with the new moon, one of the most powerful times to set intentions and call in new beginnings. In this stillness of upstate New York, your manifestations amplify synchronicities and your desires move from vision to reality. This is your time. This is your moment. Spots are extremely limited and they're already filling up with incredible women ready to set the bar even higher. Direct message me on Instagram with the word upstate, or you can visit us on our website at journeywithvrd.com and apply there. I am so excited for this retreat. It is such an incredible opportunity to fall back in love with not just yourself, but the people you surround yourself with life itself. And I cannot wait to see you there. Now, back to the episode. I
Hmm.
love that. And I know it's different for everyone, but
Sure.
it's important for people to know the different ways so that they could tune in and be like, is this the way that I know how to say
Abs-
yes or when to say
yes.
yes?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
So you took this course and then
Yes.
did you go straight into teaching breath work? How did
I
you?
did. Yeah,
Mhm.
I did. I started facilitating right away. I had a small practice, and I was finding my way with it because how I was trained is not necessarily the way that I do it breathwork myself today. There
Mhm.
is certainly um, the style of breathing, yes, but the emphasis on catharsis and um, I knew coming out of that training that I had to find my own way with it. And that's frankly how I've come out of every single training. Now I know. Now I know that every time I do a training, I'm going to have to kind of take what I've learned and rework it and make it my own. I just
Mhm.
can't take somebody else's
For
method,
sure.
frankly, and just, parrot it out. But so yeah, so it took me a little bit of time to kind of work through that. And um, and then I had my second child, so I took a little bit of a break, and then I came back to breathwork facilitation. By then, um, I was also facilitating other things as well. And so, basically it's been 25 years of facilitating a variety of things. And sometimes in combo, like I did with your retreat.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I feel really strongly about this that when you're in your purpose, things kind of snowball. And that's not to say that everything just comes to you so easily, because as an entrepreneur, I know that's not the case. You really do need to show up consistently. However, there's an element of such a great reward, even for the smallest wins when you're in your purpose, that makes it feel so worth it. And that motivates you to keep on going. So I love that you shared all this and you're definitely in your purpose. I mean, I witnessed firsthand your work, and it's incredible the feeling that you get during, but even after the
Mm,
session is just so releasing, and you feel like you're home. Like you said, you're back
yeah.
home in your body. Um, you spoke a lot about ancestors in the beginning of this. So I do want to ask,
Yes.
when was it that you got connected with your ancestors? And is there a specific one that you're closest with?
So it's interesting because the way that I was raised in Tunisia, I hardly knew or know of any family members because, we didn't go back and forth a lot. And so um, I don't know ancestors or family members. I don't know. I didn't ever really know many in this earthly life. Um, but in family constellations, I've connected with a number of them.
Mm.
And so I certainly feel connected to my great aunt. I mean, there is no mistake. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that I am who I am and have this spiritual connection because of her, right? That
Mhm.
that her wisdom, her life experience is in my genes. It comes through me because literally, when I was embarking on my career with breathwork, I would find myself talking to clients and saying stuff that I was like, how do I even know that?
Mhm.
Right. And then I would read spiritual books and I was like, yeah, but I knew that. How did I know that? Well, it didn't start with me. And frankly, very little starts with us. But in our culture, we don't really think about that. We don't really talk about that much, right? The fact that most of our issues didn't start with us, nor did
Mhm.
our gifts or talents or even hopes and dreams. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to consider, really, because if it's an issue, it kind of helps people not be so hard on themselves sometimes when we do a family constellation and they realize that this issue that they thought was kind of their fault, if you will, or their problem, or, that there's something wrong with them because they have this issue. And through the constellation, they can see that, you know, six generations had this issue. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, well, of course, I get it now. I'll give you an example, a personal example, right?
Mhm.
In that, due to there, well, there are specific circumstances in my childhood relating to kind of the triangle with my brothers that and the kind of misogynistic attitude in general in my family of origin
Mhm.
that has created that I can pinpoint to that has created a sense of not really feeling like I'm enough. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I can assure you, I have done a lot of work around that. Okay. I don't just facilitate. I mean, I'm all about, doing my own work. And there was a point where I was kind of like, my God, like, what is my problem? I can't quite seem to get over this not enough thing. Sure, I've gotten, it's gotten better in some arenas, but there are times when it just still seems to loom large, right? And then we did a constellation, and the facilitator had all the women in my family system stand up who didn't feel like they were enough. And of course, you think collectively of the woman's role in society as being beneath, right? In a
Mhm.
patriarchal society. I mean, all of these women stood up. And really, it was like, of course, I've been carrying this wound that has been from generation to generation on both sides of my family. So it helps us soften towards ourselves when we realize like we are the ones that are breaking the cycle. But sometimes this is a cycle that's been repeated so many generations. It's just going to take a while.
What is your spiritual superpower or sixth sense?
So I would probably say embodiment again.
Mhm.
Just the ability to be in my body, to feel other people through my own body,
Mm.
right? So I thanks to breath work, have learned that I can feel people but not take their stuff on
I-
by keeping my own energy field clear through breathing, sound, and movement.
Mhm.
Um, so embodiment, I mean, I believe that, in a way, what is our highest spiritual purpose? It's to be in this human body. Because why else would we be here otherwise?
Mhm.
Why would we be in this body? So I'm not about spiritual bypass. I'm not about like, let's all be love and light, because that's not to me why we're here. So embodiment is a huge kind of spiritual practice for me. And doing it in a way that isn't always serious. I think play is so important. Fun, play. And again, I feel really grateful because growing up in Tunisia, in that culture, right? So traditional cultures, everybody comes together in community and sings and dances, right? If you
Mm.
think of every traditional culture, there's singing and dancing as a way to not only commune but pray, to heal, right? To express, to so many reasons that singing and dancing is used as not just as a spiritual practice but also to really enjoy life. And
Mhm.
so I also really love to play as part of my embodiment practice, like an ecstatic dance. I love to be very playful. At other times, I may, kind of be moving anger through my body, but I mean, we look at animals. Animals play their entire lives. It's a very
Mhm.
powerful way to bond with others, as well as to just really, you know, get the juices out of life, right?
For sure. And as a manifestation coach, what I could definitely say is the quickest way to manifest is to embody, is to
Hmm.
be more in the being than the doing. And it's not to say, I think a lot of people confuse this like being is just receiving and opening and it's more passive. But there is a lot of action in the being, which is
Mm.
the releasing. Releasing is an action to become unblocked in order to receive, in order to expand to receive. And then something really nice that you said is not taking everything so seriously and playing. Because one of my favorite sayings or piece of wisdom somebody gave me a few years ago that had stuck with me forever is Vivian, it's just not that serious. And I think we do get lost in the sauce, you know? We get lost in like trying to be perfect, trying to be spiritual, trying to live a healthy life, trying to do it all, right? Especially as women. And when the truth is, the being part is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be playful and joyful. And that's part of the holiness of the spirituality is coming into that play. And so I really love
Absolutely.
that you said that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as a practitioner, I have to stay in balance. So this afternoon, I went for such a beautiful hike with one of my best girlfriends and my one of my dogs. And I mean, if I don't take care of myself in that way, where it's just, the beauty of nature and the richness of a dear friend and the company, right? And the conversations that we have, and then the purity of witnessing our animals because they're always in the moment, right? And they're just in their pure consciousness. And so, uh,
Ah,
yeah, it's important to fill ourselves up that way.
I have so many questions. In the beginning, we're gonna get through them. We're gonna get through them. In the beginning of this episode, you spoke about how your first breathwork journey
Mhm.
helped you reach different levels of consciousness. And I want to know if you could help the listener understand why that could be really healing or
Mm,
beneficial to them.
mhm. So we live in a very heady culture.
Hmm.
We in this culture place a lot of importance on the mind. And frankly, if that was such a great thing, I think we'd have a much happier population, but we don't. We have a population that's primarily out of balance, right? As witnessed by the fact that 70% of the American population is on medication. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so, some for mental health, some for physical reasons. But I mean, that is a staggering statistic and a growing number of children, sadly, as well. So, altered states of consciousness like breath work, and that can sound like, kind of a mouthful full because, we just imagine like we're hallucinating. And sometimes it can feel that way. But what we're simply talking about are different brain wave states. And in fact, if you're lying down in breath work, you don't even realize how deep you're in the moment. So a lot of times when people sit up afterwards, they're like, wow, gosh, that's when you realize like, oh, it's a good thing I'm not standing right now. Right. So we're just talking about different brainwave states where our mind slows down, which is awesome. Because in the space between our thoughts and in breath work, we're not trying to get rid of all of our thoughts. We're just creating more space, essentially bringing the mind into balance by slowing it down. Okay, so that we can expand into more of who we are because we are so much more than this mind. We have this incredible, miraculous body that can actually self heal when we are in being, like you said, right?
Hmm.
We have emotions galore. We have a spiritual connection of some sort, whether we believe in God or nature. We have intuition or inner guidance, right?
Hmm.
And so when we go into, I keep citing breathwork because, of course, that's something I'm very familiar with. What can come up when we go into these expanded states is we can create a connection with our subconscious where all of a sudden we have a memory come up that we haven't thought about sometimes in 10, 15, 20 years just comes out, right? It comes out of the subconscious, which is in the body, which accounts for 93% of what we know. So we have all of this wisdom in the body, not just the body's intelligence, but knowing, right? Our body has archived every experience we've ever had. And so we can get a body knowing, right, that comes out of, the breathwork experience as well. Or we also have information that has come through genetics from our ancestors that live in the body. And so we can know things when we're in breathwork, when the mind is, again, not thrown out of the picture, but brought into balance. Because the
Hmm.
mind as a tool is phenomenal, but not as a
Hmm.
ruler. And most people are living where the mind is what's ruling. And frankly, it's a mess. The mind is full of lies. The body
Hmm.
never lies.
Can you share three pieces of wisdom from your practice for the person who's listening and they're like, "Ooh, this is interesting." What are your favorite parts of what you do?
That everything that they need is within. Everything we are seeking for and have been told is outside of ourselves is actually within ourselves.
Mhm.
Whether that's safety, love, et cetera, et cetera. That, essentially coming home to ourselves is like finding the cake, and then the icing is what's outside, right? So that is the primary piece of wisdom that I wish for everybody to know, and that we all have what I call a true self or an essential self that we are born with, right? So, for example, a baby doesn't doubt itself. It
Mhm.
it only knows self-love. It only knows trust in itself, right? And so that's within us. So also what we seek, for example, a lot of times people are coming in, they want, oh, I want more peace, or I want this, and they don't realize they have the capacity for it. They don't, like, they tend to think of themselves as being anxious because they've forgotten this part of themselves. So when I say come home to them, these two are kind of related, if you will. It's understanding that not only what you're seeking is within, but that what you're seeking, frankly, is a lot closer than you even realize, right?
Mhm.
It's just about awakening and revealing what you already had within you, as opposed to, a lot of times people go to the breathwork journey, for example, and I have them set their intention and they'll say peace. Well, when they're saying that, they couldn't feel further away from it. It feels, they're saying it as an intention because it feels so elusive, so far
Mhm.
away. They're so disconnected from it, so lost. And it's entirely possible that within the space of an hour, they are absolutely experiencing that peace. Why? Because it's
Mhm.
right there. So it's kind of this illusion, because we're so focused on the external that we don't realize what's right under our nose.
Mhm.
And I would say the third would be, as I mentioned, the body's capacity or our being's capacity for self healing, right? But how do we access that? By being, by
Mhm.
learning how to empty out, to
Mhm.
let go, and to open up so that we can allow the mechanisms within our body or even our being to be able to work in the way that it can. But it can't, like, we can't really expect our bodies to self heal when we're constantly on the go, when we're constantly experiencing stress in the body, right? When we're living in a state of contraction, which most people are, right? Due to the societal programming, whether it's families or otherwise, that told us from very young, don't express yourself authentically.
Mhm.
And what do we learn young? We learn through negative consequences by expressing ourselves spontaneously, authentically, and innocently, whether it's jumping for joy or saying a comment that's truthful about an adult in the room and then getting punished for that, or, reprimanded, what have you. We have a lot of experiences, each and every one of us, where we experience the negative consequences for just being innocently ourselves, expressing something innocent. And so we learn to shut down. We
Mhm.
learn to shut our expression down, which leads to most people are walking around very controlled, very tense and rigid, right? And all bottled up. Yeah.
Mhm. It's funny, I really identify with the belief that this life isn't for healing. We're not meant to get stuck on the cycle of constantly healing. Yes, there are going to be times in our lives where we go on to that journey of healing, but it's not meant to take a lifetime. We're here
Mm.
to really enjoy the different parts about ourselves and really, like you said, tap back into that playfulness and that childlike self and have fun with it. Um, and like you said, we aren't as far away from our desires. They are right under our nose. And the sooner we can awaken to that, the sooner we can embody that version of ourselves who has the things that we're now desiring.
Hmm.
From the lens that you really see the world and that you live life with, can you talk about motherhood and bringing up your children?
Mm. Well, it has certainly made me the person that I am today in so many ways. I can't even imagine not having undergone that journey, but also still on that journey, thankfully. Yes, I continue to grow through the through this in part invitation of wanting to be the most authentic version of myself for my children so they can be that, right?
Hmm.
Because we can tell our kids how to go through life, but if we're not walking the talk, the words are not going to have an impact. And
Hmm.
so I have consistently thought to myself, if my daughter or my son were in my shoes, what would I tell them? What advice would I give them? And that's the advice I have to give myself. Those are the choices I've had to make at times. If one of my children were in the position that I was in. And, it's really I was a single mother for many, many years and really struggling financially because at the beginning of my career doing this type of work, let me tell you something, the wellness industry was not what it is today. I struggled financially and yet I was committed. It just was a path that was very like I'm not gonna lie, there were times I fantasized about getting a real job with a salary and benefits. I could not make myself do it. So I've gone through my fair share of struggles, whether it's financial or otherwise, and, just raising two kids on my own. And it has shown me the depths of resiliency that I have, and
Mm.
strength, and capacity for commitment, and, you know, doing it for something greater than myself,
Hmm.
right?
Is
So,
there, yeah,
mhm. Go ahead.
is there a societal norm you had to break in order to become this version of you?
I don't know. I mean, if there was one thing I would say I had to break, it would be this. I am my own guide,
Hmm.
you know, and that's always been in there to some degree, but certainly more and more really recognizing that my path is really literally my own path, nobody
Hmm.
else's. And, I believe that's the case for everybody, but I've really had to stay true to myself because, my family never wanted me to do this type of work. They continued to try to talk me out of it because they didn't feel like it was financially viable,
Hmm.
right? Um, so I've just really had to learn to be true to myself
Hmm.
and, kind of stave off the pressure from people that I was close to telling me this was not a good idea.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
get that. And what would you say your biggest vision and mission is for your work? What are you manifesting?
Mm. Well, I am manifesting more breathwork facilitator trainings. So that is a baby of mine. It's my own program that I created after I've actually done three different breathwork facilitator trainings, like undergone, because over the course of 25 years, I mean, I am always going to be a learner. My mother, on her deathbed at 92, was in the middle of taking a poetry
Um,
class, right? So I know where I get it from, and I love that. And So I've done a variety of trainings, and I've put together a program based on what I wished I'd gotten from the different trainings. Of course, I got
mm,
wonderful stuff from each one, but the format I just felt like could be different. And so um, I never really thought that I would do this, but I kept having people come to me and saying, "Okay, when are you going to do the breathwork facilitator training?" And I was like, "No, I can't. I don't have time. I don't have the bandwidth to put together a manual and a curriculum. And if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right." And blah blah blah. And then finally, it's like the universe kept knocking, and it finally knocked loudly enough when somebody said, not when are you going to do it, but they said to me, I heard you do the best breathwork facilitator trainings. And I thought, okay, I surrendered. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I said, yes, fine. So I started off, and now it's been over 10 years, and I've done a number of them. And I want to keep doing more because I just feel so alive and on purpose. So, what I'm manifesting is more group stuff. What I did on your
Mm-hmm.
retreat, I absolutely love doing that. I just did the same thing. And of course, every time it's different, but the same type of ceremony, combining the dance with the breath work for 80 people at another retreat here
Wow.
recently. And I'm really loving the group ceremonies like that.
I
Yeah.
love
So
that.
more of the groups in terms of ceremonies and more of the breathwork facilitator trainings.
Ooh, I love that. And for the person listening who's just like, I cannot wait to work with Gwen, or I would love
Yes.
to work with Gwen, how can people get to know more about you? What are you offering currently? And are you on
Yeah.
social media?
Well, no, I'm not really on social media because in part my Instagram got hacked a while back. I've never been big on social media, but I did kind of play around with it for a little bit and then it got hacked and I just kind of lost my mojo. That may be something I manifest this year too. So thanks for planting that seed. Or not, who knows? Maybe I don't rely on social media at all, but I do have a YouTube channel. And
Mhm.
so people can go there to learn how to get ready for a breathwork ceremony because I do a free online breathwork ceremony the first Sunday of every month. This is my tithing. I wanted to always find a way to give back. And at one point, I arrived at how about if I just offer this as a gift once a month, this online ceremony? And it has been such a joy for me to do that. So that's one way people can just come and experience me for free. On my website, you can see I offer a lot of different packages to coach with me. And when I do coaching with people, I incorporate a lot of the different modalities that you've heard me talking about. And then I also have a breathwork membership. So
Mm.
people come to my free online breathwork and then they go, well, we want to keep doing breathwork with you. And so essentially, the membership is primarily a library. I've got probably at this point 60 plus
Yeah.
facilitated recordings of different lengths. So 40 are hour-long journeys, and then I've got shorter ones because more recently, that's what I've been doing more of. 5 days a week, I'll do anything from like 10 minutes to 40 minutes of breath work. And so I've started to incorporate more of the shorter ones as well. Plus, there are free meditations on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Inspired Sedona, like my website. But the Breathwork membership is my new baby, and I'm really excited about it. And so I wanted to give all of your listeners an opportunity to try it for free. So I'm giving a free
Mm.
week uh, opportunity to just try my membership out and see what it's like to do breathwork daily or to maybe get inspired to do it as a practice, right?
Mm.
Because you can also just go ahead and use my breathwork playlist on Spotify, but sometimes we need a shot in the arm, being facilitated to get our own practice going. So,
Exactly. Wow, I
yeah,
love that. I love
yeah.
that. And is there anything else you'd like to share for the listeners to know?
Well, the work that I do primarily with private clients is online. It's on
Mhm.
Zoom. So I
Oh,
am
amazing.
accessible anywhere in the world, right?
Mm.
Of course, if people come to Sedona, I love to create retreats for them. We kind of put together the different modalities that I do. And of course, as you know, Sedona is a magical place to do
Right.
healing work. So, but yeah, I would say that probably one of the other superpowers that I have is fierce compassion. And I've
Mm.
adopted that because that's what I was told several times, wow, you're really fierce. And it was kind of like, really? Am I? And now I'm like, yeah, I'm fiercely compassionate.
Oh, I love
And
that.
so, yes, I really am able to see the the humanity in people and I feel really moved by that.
I'm
Mhm.
so happy you shared that. It's funny, compassion has happened to be my word for
Mm,
February. It's been showing
yeah.
up, and I heard something really beautiful about compassion that I'll just share really fast. Um, a distinction between compassion is most people think that compassion is if were to fall off a boat, you have to jump off and be there with them.
Mm,
When in actuality, compassion is somebody, let's say, falling off the boat, and instead of you sinking with them, you putting out a hand and helping them
mhm,
come back on the boat. And I
mhm.
really felt that to be beautiful because a lot of the time we think that in order to help others, we have to be in their shoes or we have to get down to their level, when in actuality, it's just opening your heart and being there.
Yeah,
So,
beautifully said. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that in our culture, compassion can get kind of tied up into fixing, right?
mhm,
We're so quick to offer advice and want to quote unquote help somebody, but compassion can be truthfully much more helpful in just letting somebody share their story and just listening, being there
mhm,
with them. Yeah.
mhm. And it's a beautiful gift to have as a healer. So I do love that you have that.
Thank you.
Of
Yeah. Thank
course.
you.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you for being here with me. I'm going to share all your links in the show notes, and I'm I'm sure I will, that we will see each other again soon.
Oh, I so hope so. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me, Vivian. It's been such a pleasure.
Hey, if you like this podcast episode, please download it, give us a nice review, and follow us on Instagram at Journey with VRD to get all the latest and the greatest updates. Till next week.